I think we could probably go ahead and get started. Thanks to everybody for being here this morning. This is a press conference that all the folks up here and many others around the state that are involved in Alabama's extremely significant poultry industry have been hoping would not happen and dreading the case that it might. But we do have a problem with avian influenza in Alabama, and I just wanted to let you all know what we are doing, some of the things that we are doing to deal with that. First of all, we had in Tennessee, 231 goes right through Lincoln County, Tennessee, and we had an event there 2 weeks ago, and then one a little bit about 40 miles west of there. Subsequently to that, a few days later in Tennessee. And then over the weekend, well, first let me say this. We had an outbreak, pretty bad outbreak, mostly in the Midwest in the United States a year ago. And once that happened, and we always have been vigilant about this, but we hadn't had any incidents in Alabama, we started an intensive effort of planning and getting ready for the possibility that we would have to deal with this. So that's one thing I want to really emphasize is the stakeholder groups up here, Farmers Federation, Extension System, our folks, Poultry and Egg, Agribusiness Council, and every other state and federal agency that could possibly conceivably be involved in dealing with this, particularly the U.S. Department of Agriculture, have been meeting for months on in preparation and planning for this eventuality. So really what we've done is plan our work, and now we're working our plan. And I want to particularly thank Dr. Tony Frazier, the state veterinarian, and the specialists on his staff that have been really working around the clock, not only to go into the field and sample flocks, but take samples from industry folks, for example, and run those tests at the diagnostic lab in Montgomery. When we have an issue that surfaces from one of our investigations that is forward, the potential adverse flu infection is taken immediately to Ames, Iowa, to the U.S. Department of Agriculture lab up there to be confirmed. So that is ongoing. We do have 3 premises in Alabama that we are investigating right now to double check any possible concerns there. And just so that you'll know, one of them is in Lauderdale County. One is that was industry premise. This is a backyard type premise here up in extreme north Madison County. And then in Scottsboro, we had another that we're investigating. And this one, to show you the degree that our specialists are going to, we randomly check any flea markets and those type sales of poultry. But we're doing it more intensively now, and one of these, the one in near Scottsboro, was from a auction type or flea market type transaction that took place, and actually was in a guinea fowl, right? So that's the degree that we're of preparedness and planning and execution that our folks are doing to deal with this situation. Now, one of the most significant things we are doing today, Dr. Frazier, who has that responsibility by law, and we certainly take his recommendation on it in a unanimous manner, has decided it's time for us to stop any movement of birds that would be going to shows or flea markets or auctions or any of those type things until further notice. So we want to do that today, and it's really important to get that information out to the public. And then the last thing before we take questions that I want to emphasize is that it's not a food safety issue in Alabama or anywhere else for that matter. In fact, most likely if I get my regular 2 or 3 times a week luncheon, I'll be having fried chicken for lunch today most all these folks know that's my favorite food. So anyway, having said that, we'll be happy to try to respond to any questions anybody has. Mike, I know you got something.
Well, for those of us that don't know anything about this, can you tell us why this is so serious?
Yes, I thank you, and I should have opened with that. Very good question. All of you all may not know that the source for this avian influenza is wild waterfowl. Alabama, in this respect, has been blessed. We sort of feel like we've been kind of isolated between the major flyways, but we do have a heavy winter waterfowl flocks in our ducks and geese primarily in North Alabama around Wheeler and up in there. So that's probably the source of where this came from. The biosecurity, and that cannot be stressed enough, and that's what we, the industry and these stakeholders in every state and federal agency has been really concentrating on for a number of months. And when we say biosecurity, we're talking about not wearing the same clothes in the different poultry houses, even changing shoes or boots and that sort of thing, so that there's absolutely no transmission of the infection from one location to another. So that is extremely important. But the feces from the wild waterfowl is the primary source for this, and we were somewhat concerned that we had such a this was like in excess of 100 miles, wasn't it, Ben? Yes, sir. Between those locations. So that's an area for concern as well, because you know, if it was concentrated in one area, we'd be a lot more comfortable. What happens is, and this is the case not only in Alabama but every other state that's dealing with this, we set up a control. Have you got some of those smaller maps? We set up a control area that's 6.2 miles around any central location that we're watching or investigating, and stop the movement in that, and that's where we run into the door-to-door searching for backyard flocks, and that's where our specialists have found some areas that we think need further investigation. Is literally going door to door and knocking on the doors and asking folks if they have chickens on site, or if they know of a neighbor that does, and that sort of thing. And to date, all of those folks have been extremely cooperative. So we're grateful for that and hope that kind of cooperation continues.
You said this wasn't a food safety issue? So
No,
why
not
is this such a concern?
because the poultry industry is like in excess of $15 billion economic impact in Alabama, and it can be really bad. And to give you almost a worst case scenario, but an idea of what has happened in other places, Minnesota is the source of a tremendous amount of the turkey meat that we have in the United States. And last year, when they had an extreme outbreak up there, the state of Minnesota spent over $300 million in dealing with it. So it is a big issue. And the other part of it that probably goes along with that is that immediately when the site is investigated or premise is investigated and there's a reason to be concerned, those birds are depopulated immediately. Even before the test are confirmed or anything else. Particularly with the industry, they want those birds immediately depopulated and almost always, except for extreme outbreaks, buried on site.
So what's the main thing you want to let people know who don't know much about poultry or farming or anything like that? What's the main thing you want?
That our department and the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the industry and all the stakeholder groups are getting out as much pertinent information on these investigations as we can, that the food, poultry is safe for consumption, and then that quarantine, or we don't call it quarantine, what do we call it? Stop movement on the ones I mentioned about flea markets and exhibitions and sales, auctions and those kind of things. There's a substantial amount of that goes on in the state. If any of you have ever gone around to any of the county fairs, it's unbelievable how many people raise those showbirds and every other kind.
And when was the last time you had a finding of avian flu in the state of Alabama?
Dr. Frazier can address that, but we've never had a problem with the high path or the most serious strain. And this, I might add, without getting in too far into the weeds, which I'm not capable of to begin with, but this flu this year seems to be mutating very rapidly into other strains,
So right now,
but not necessarily the particularly bad strains.
so right now, what if any effect would this have on the person going to shop at a local grocery store?
None whatsoever.
John, will you tell them about the website that has a lot of background information for you?
Yeah, there's a lot of, why don't you just go ahead and announce that, Doctor?
There's a real good source of background information for you. It's called AlabamaAvianInfluenza.com. You can get to it by going that way and doing a search, or you can go right to the extension website, which is aces.edu, and it's in our front banner. It gives you a little list of facts, and it also gives you some information on biosecurity, and that's really how we control it, is by limiting movement of not only birds, but when you are traveling, if you have poultry, you make sure that you use different clothing. We're working very, very hard with our 4-H'ers and with a lot of the backyard flock people, making sure that they're following the protocol so that their birds are safe, but they're also not infecting the industry. Because the industry is $15 billion of economic activity and 85,000 jobs. And so we want to make sure we protect that industry, make sure that you communicate to everyone that their poultry products, eggs and meat, are safe.
Thank you, Dr. Lemmy. That's Dr. Lemmy with the Alabama Cooperative Extension System. And thank you for that. We've got that information and other information about contacts in a press release that'll be forthcoming. We had hoped to be ready to hand it out to you all this morning, but as those of you that were here earlier know, Dr. Frazier is still comparing notes with other states and U.S. Department of Agriculture, so we just wasn't ready to finalize that in time for this. So we will be handing that out. Is it ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have it to hand out, and it has the information, Dr. Lemmy, the contact information that he referred to, and our professionals as well, so that is available now, I understand. Anything else? Yes, sir.
If this wasn't controlled the way you're trying to do, what, would it just wipe out chickens all across the state, or what would be the?
Well, we just don't know. It would be like, potentially it could be like a wildfire and it could be catastrophic. But as I think you understand now, we are certainly doing everything we possibly can with so many different agencies and entities and stakeholder groups and industry and everybody else. But we already were doing that as well. So for many months now, we have really been pushing biosecurity. And when I say that, I mean things like if a feed truck goes into one commercial poultry operation, it is thoroughly washed and cleaned and disinfected before it even goes into another one. So there's a lot of things involved in all this, in addition to the things that Dr. Lemmy and I specifically commented on.
And just to clarify, the 3 counties are Lauderdale, Madison, and Jackson counties?
Today, that's right, and any area that we both in Tennessee, both of their first 2 investigations with that controlled area overlapped into North Alabama, and as you can see, certainly I was in North Madison County, does overlap into Tennessee. So we're working with Tennessee and Georgia, and Alabama's much larger poultry state than Tennessee, but what Tennessee has is concentrated just north of Alabama.
And how much of a concern is this for poultry farmers, including the ones down in South Alabama?
It's always a high priority for everybody, and again, we can't overemphasize enough the biosecurity part of it, because that's like so many things, it gets to be routine, and we tend to relax and let our guard down and fail to do the things. Well, it's easy not to change shoes going from one poultry house to another and things like that. So that's just human nature. But something like this certainly does heighten the concern and awareness, and we hope that'll all pay off, because we've done a lot of education and a lot of planning to be ready for this.
So are birds from those 3 counties being tested now, but it's not yet been positively determined that it was bird?
Know exactly what strain. So, yeah, they are all 3 samples in Iowa now?
Yes.
Okay,
Are on the way.
yeah. We have tested them and then sent them on up for any confirmation.
Okay, so the test here determined it was bird flu.
Suspect.
Suspect.
Okay.
And then you get into much more technical stuff like high path, low path, high path, and all of those sort of things of just what strain it is, so.
So right now it's only suspected of the bird flu, not confirmed?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't make a final declaration on it until our tests have been confirmed or reconfirmed.
Reporting you sick birds.
Hmm?
Reporting you sick.
Oh, yeah, it's extremely important. I think this is maybe in that press release, but it's really important in addition to the stop movement for backyard poultry owners to report any signs of sick birds. That's critically important, because we are testing not only the chickens, but the guineas and the ducks and the pheasants and other backyard birds as well. So all of those need to be watched closely for any signs of illness.
In these cases, is this just 3 individual birds? Or is this like a number of birds at each location?
Right, number of birds at each location. We test every flock of birds before they leave the growers, the poultry houses that we see. Those are blood sample tested by our diagnostic labs before they move from the grower to the processor. And this is just more intensive testing and vigilance, and trying to be really sure that we keep this contained if and when it occurs. Anything else? Thank you all so much. All these guys, and I'll be around if anybody wants to get into more specifics about any of it, because we do have some experts here. Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all coming out and helping us with this extremely important information.